it's also, you're judging your emotion right now. That
Yeah.
this is a good thing. That part of letting go of anxiety is that this is overwhelming, is to let those tears flow. It is overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
I put it on myself, but I feel like this is my like it's my responsibility to carry this burden, and I have because I signed up for it. Hi, Dr. Ramani. Nice to see you virtually this time, but I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah. Yes. No, I'm sad about it. I much prefer sitting next to you in a room, but so we're adjusting.
But thank you for giving us some of your time to share with our viewers.
Pleasure.
A lot of people are moving to this virtual therapy style, and a lot of people are curious about what a virtual therapy session might look like. You have been doing them even before this pandemic we're in, but obviously in this state, you're doing them all the time. What are you seeing in virtual therapy that you're not seeing in traditional in-person therapy?
I mean, listen, there's no day I'm ever going to say that virtual therapy is better than in-person therapy. We lose so much, right? Sometimes I can't see all of a person's body language. Human beings are meant to be in rooms with each other. That's how we learn to do this. But I have to say, there's been some interesting tidbits, though. I'll tell one thing is that I get to see where people live, and some of them are very proud to show me, like, you want to see where I live? And I never get to do that as a therapist. So I've really enjoyed, like, they'll show me art that they have on their wall or photographs, or there's a certain interesting pride some people have. And I'll also sometimes think, how interesting, this isn't how I thought their house would look. So I'm getting a piece of information about my clients. Now, I, strangely enough, do therapy from bed, which sort of makes me feel like some sort of strange character in a film, because it's a private room in my house. So it's kind of comfortable for me because my legs are up, but I'm trying to make my bedroom seem like a therapy room. Like, I light a candle and I have my water and my tea and all of that. But we definitely are losing something in translation. One of the most difficult things, though, Kyle, I'm seeing is that people don't have privacy at home right now. If anyone lives with another human being, and that could be kids, it could be other adults, they may be wanting to talk about that in therapy, and they may not feel like now they can be as forthcoming. I've had clients say, I'm going to put this on until I have privacy, because this is now a pointless endeavor. Some people will do it by phone in their car. They'll drive their car blocks away and do it from their car. So people are finding different kinds of solutions to this that we never actually had to think of. Therapy rooms or private space. But it's, definitely something's lost in translation, and I'm trying to find what the beautiful moments are. I prefer to be able to see people's faces, but there's also other distractions too, Kyle. Phones are going off, things are going off in a therapy room. We kind of are able to all of that off, but in a virtual space, the stuff of life is still happening around you.
Well, I've shared with MedCircle viewers that I was diagnosed with depression when I was 9 years old. I have been diagnosed with depression multiple times since, as I've seen new therapists and new psychiatrists and psychologists. But at this point, I am feeling, and I say that only to say that anxiety never felt like a big issue for me. Certainly there were elements of anxiety, but it was really always more the depression until now. I feel like my anxiety is up.
Yes.
And so I'd like to we know this isn't going to be a real therapist. You are not my therapist. We have a professional and personal relationship, but I feel very comfortable being vulnerable. And I think this will give people a good look into some of the notes that could come up during therapy. So with that in mind, I would love to just kind of have a discussion with you about anxiety in this new time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny. In my sessions with clients now, we actually have the issues that are happening in the world right now, pandemic issues, call them isolation issues, and that's the first few minutes of the session. It could be the whole session. And then we go to real life. Because the fact is, life didn't stop because all of this happened. People still have broken hearts. People are still worried about if they're going to get a good grade on their exam. People are still wondering if they should go to law school. People are still angry at their mothers. I mean, the stuff that was happening before is still happening now. And so once we get past sort of what I call the pandemic session, we move into life.
Yeah.
And so, and what's happening though is what we've got to remember is anxiety sort of it kind of hitches on to everything in our life. So I'll give an example of life. Let's say you have a big deadline at work, okay? And it's not done, and you're feeling really anxious about that deadline. The odds are you're also going to start feeling anxious about other things in your life, your relationships, your health, whatever it is. Anxiety tends to activate us, and it doesn't know like, oh, we're only going to be anxious about the deadline. No, anxiety is a feeling. It's an experience in our central nervous system. It's an experience in our bodies, and it's an experience in how we feel and how we think. So it's kind of, it takes over the whole system. Now, when you add to this, like my deadline isn't your problem, Kyle, right? So when I'm having an anxiety about a deadline, you're like, oh, I'm sorry you're anxious, but it's not my problem. It's the first time in human history we're all having a shared anxiety simultaneously. Even natural disasters are only focused on the place it's happening. Like the hurricane people are only in the hurricane place, the earthquake people in the earthquake place. This is all of us. Yeah. So even for those of us as mental health practitioners, we're like, wow, this is the first time we're seeing almost like a collective trauma that's global, a collective anxiety, global. There's nobody who has not been affected by this. And so it's definitely, there's something humanizing about it, Kyle. So it's helping me a lot working with people from a point of view of anxiety. But here's where it gets tricky, is that there's also this sort of global theme of people feeling that I shouldn't be upset about my divorce or my problems with school when the world is falling apart. So people are feeling guilty about their traditional anxiety. So if we were in a session though, and you were bringing up anxiety, I'd say, just simply tell me what you're feeling anxious about. Some people will roll their eyes saying, girl, it's very clear what I'm anxious about. And I'll say, actually, no, it's not. Because some people are anxious about, you name it, getting sick, losing a job, elderly parents. But then some people are anxious about stuff that have nothing to do with what's going on. So it's step one in therapy is to recognize that it's not one size fits all. Is if I've learned only one thing, we may all be going through a collective event, a collective trauma, a collective anxiety, but every single of us on the planet is having a different experience of it. Mm-hmm. And in therapy, what you do is you talk about your different experience of it without judging. There is no anxiety that's too small, as far as I'm concerned. Your anxiety is yours, and that makes it valid.
Let's get into my anxieties then. Because I cannot tie my anxiety to one thing. Mm-hmm. When you ask the question, well, where is your anxiety coming from, or what are you anxious about? At this point in my life, and perhaps for the first time, it's an underlying constant anxiety, where it's, I don't know, I'm pretty healthy. My family's healthy. Yeah, we're going through this whole thing, but like I wake up and I go, okay, okay, everything's cool. And then I go down to the kitchen and I go, okay, wait. And then I go, okay, everything's cool. I constantly have to remind myself that I'm not in danger.
So this is something that we call free-floating anxiety. It has a name, okay? And many, many people, before any of what's happening in the world happened, were living with free-floating anxiety all the time. Their friends who are maybe friends and family who are being less than kind would call them worry. But they worry about everything. And they're saying, you know what? I'm just anxious. I'm crawling out of my skin. I can't sit still. Free-floating anxiety is not an unusual presentation of anxiety. And there's different ways we can meet someone on their free-floating anxiety. Now, there's different things that can contribute to free-floating anxiety. Some of it is just existing anxiety, that people sometimes who are anxious kids become anxious adults. So the kids who, when they were 6 years old, would wonder, what happens when the sun blows up? What happens when I die? Like, they're those kids who ask those questions. I had a kid who asked those questions, and she's still pretty anxious. You know, and I was an anxious kid. So I get that. Like, they're just worried kids, and they become worried adults, and they worry about everything. One thing we do know with free-floating anxiety is that a lot of the tools we use for anxiety, things like mindfulness, meditation, and breathing, work really well. Mm-hmm. And so those would be sort of one of the things we are doing, all of us who are doing, working with clients right now, even virtually, and it's not as satisfying, but we could definitely do it, is work on a mindfulness exercise right then and there. Because remember, when we have free-floating anxiety, it's a combination of worrying past and worrying about the future. which are both kind of pointless because the past can't be changed and the future hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So we're like, what is happening now? And this is a psychologist, I've never seen this, and it's become the best time in history, maybe at least in contemporary human history, to work on mindfulness, because it's the first time we're all sort of like,
Wait, to work on what?
To work on mindfulness.
Oh, on mindfulness. Yeah. Yeah.
Because mindfulness really forces us into the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're having free-flowing anxiety, so let me use one of the techniques I'm trying a lot of my clients, which is hand washing. We're supposed to wash our hands like 30 times a day now, right? Every time you wash your hands, that's a intervention. So Kyle, an interesting place we can start with you is, let's do something we're all having to do 20 times a day, which is hand washing. So you said you're feeling this free-floating anxiety. A great place to start for you would be, again, this thing you're having to do, and it has a lot of sensation involved in it, right? When you turn on the water and you pay attention to the temperature of the water, flow of the water on your hands. I'm telling everyone, if you can use a soap that has a smell you like, that's great, because that's one more sense you can be aware of. You put the soap in your hand and you feel, whether it's a bar of soap or liquid soap, you feel the sensation of the soap. Then you're moving your hands and you're paying attention to the sensation of moving your hands, the soap between your fingers, the temperature of the water. Ideally, you even close your eyes during this and do some breathing. Or if you keep your eyes open, reflect on the color of the color of the suds and all of that. This may seem silly, but it's actually not. Because for that 45 seconds, if you become immersed in hand washing, it's almost like a little bit of a reboot, a tiny little reboot that you out of the worry, as it were, the free-floating anxiety. And it then becomes a technique that you realize like you can draw upon. And there's other ways you can do this. One technique that all of us are talking about, and something you can use a lot, is breathing. When you have a moment, when that anxiety is hitting you and hitting you hard, literally that breathing in, holding it, and then a slower exhale, paying attention to how you feel, is also another really useful technique. It's just like a you can grab when you're feeling that anxiety. And you'd be amazed if you want to even try that now. Like, just eyes open, eyes closed, whatever you prefer, but take a slow inhale. Pay attention to how your body's feeling and holding that inhale. And then slowly, ideally through your nose, letting that breath go and feeling the sensation of your body, of your shoulders maybe coming down.
Yeah.
It does change you. It does change you. And that's something you can use out the day.
So when my anxiety hits me the hardest is at night, when I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm tired. No one sleeps more than Kyle Kittleson. So I'm ready to get into bed, but I lay in the bed and I put on this guided sleep meditation, and I even take a little bit of melatonin, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to really calm down, and I can't stop thinking about work. And even the meditation, like, walk into this room, open up a thing, I can't even follow it. And it's alarming to me that I can't focus on calming down when I need to calm down. Right.
And so I would say a couple of things. Now what's happening for you, and a lot of people are reporting, first of all, a lot of us are sleeping more than usual.
Oh.
Because you know what I'm saying? We're home more, we're not commuting, our days have sort of taken on a different rhythm. So I think actually we're going to see in retrospect, many people are actually attempting to log more hours of sleep. People are also bored. There's just nothing to do at some point. Like, I'm just going to go to sleep. But as with all sleep issues, and anxiety and sleep problems are really, really linked. What we'd want to do for you is review your whole sleep thing, as it were. Like, we might want you to get tired in another room and only move to bed when you're ready to call it quits. Make sense?
Yes.
I am not a fan of people watching TV in bed, the blue light, and everyone's doing it now, and I get that, but it's actually not a good way to go for anybody who's struggling with sleep problems. If you're going to do any activity before sleep, maybe reading with a low level of light would be optimal. Definitely not fooling around on your phone. but get yourself good and tired. And only at that point would you want to get between the sheets. And now, sadly, your guided sleep meditation may be something you're associating with not being able to sleep. So you may need to leave that for a little while and, and consider something else. I am a huge fan. If you have to do something, let it be reading. People fall asleep very easily when they read, all things.
Do you read before bed?
Oh, yeah, I do. Absolutely. That's what I do before I go to sleep.
Or nonfiction?
Right now, I happen to be reading fiction. More often than not, when I read at bed, it's fiction.
Fiction. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's distracting. It takes me, I have to make the images of the place in the story.
Yes.
And so I don't read comic fiction. I read vestible fiction. So I'm not having to what did they just say? It sort of flows really well. And so that's what I read at bedtime. And I'm fortunate because I will fall asleep after 2 or 3 pages. But for a lot of people, and maybe you'll stick it in for a chapter. There's something about the nature of reading, how you're using your mind, that's more fatiguing.
Yeah. My background before MedCircle was really heavily based in animal care.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest anxiety triggers for me is the topic of animal welfare, because it's hard for me to see anything where animals could be not taken care of properly. I mean, I really get amped up about it. And on Netflix right now, the big docu-series, the Tiger King.
Yes.
And so as an animal, guy, everyone's asking me about it. I haven't watched it, but just it being on the peripheral gives me anxiety. It's
interesting.
I tried to watch it. I was watching it with 2 other people. I go, guys, I can't watch this. It's going to ruin the next 4 hours of my day if I watch this.
Wow.
I will keep out nonstop. But so how can, instead of me just living a life where every time animal welfare comes up, I go, ooh, I don't know. What do I do? I don't know. I don't even know how to formulate.
Okay, let me ask you this, Kyle. Can you be okay with not being okay with that show?
Can I? Probably. It's hard for me to envision myself being okay with that. It's hard for me to do that.
All right. My point of saying, can you be okay with not being okay? Means it's okay to say, I don't want to participate in this. This is literally the worst time for people to be watching media that's unsettling for them. If you don't like frightening movies, don't watch them. I mean, this should be comedy land right now. I'm right now, I'm not a big TV viewer, as I've told you, but I've really been focusing on watching comedic shows because they're so distracting. I think what's important for you, Kyle, is so much of what anxiety is about for people is a sense of a loss of control. We are living in an era where we have no control. Like, stay at home, and that's that, right? So that's a real control. Then saying to you that people are asking me to watch imagery that's going to unsettle me. That's one more sense of loss of control. Your control comes back from saying, yeah, no, I'm not watching that. That is too upsetting for me. Can you give yourself permission? Because part of feeling management of anxiety is feeling that you can advocate and protect yourself.
I hadn't really framed it that way, which is really good insight for me. Before I really commit to that being not okay and being okay with not being okay, I feel like there's an obligation for me to suffer through that, because it's like, all right, if all these animals are suffering, am I so egotistical that I can't sit down and be uncomfortable for a day and watch this and then have an opinion and maybe advocate and do something?
Okay, so let me put the question to you in a different way. Do stimuli affect you the same way? And when I by stimuli, I mean like information of any kind. Do they affect you the same way when it's visual versus something you read?
Yeah.
So could you read about it?
I wouldn't seek it out.
Okay, but what you've been arguing is that I feel a sense of responsibility, because I'm hearing that there's almost 2 entry points to anxiety here. One entry point of the anxiety is to even witness these lapses in the treatment of animals. Okay. second anxiety is feeling that you have a responsibility and you may not be honoring that responsibility to actually talking to the world and saying why this is an issue. So there's sort of two themes happening here.
You nailed it.
Right? So it's like you're in a catch-22, which is a very characteristic part of anxiety, feeling there's nothing you can do to make this feeling go away. But like you said, although I would never seek it out, finding a compromise position where it may be the case where you say, I can't watch this. I cannot watch these gloriously beautiful animals be mistreated. I can't do this. However, I should be able to take a plot synopsis and read it and digest it so I can comment on it for the world. And understand though, Kyle, and this is the important part, that there's a back end to this, which is when we're exposing ourselves to things that are upsetting to us in any way. I don't care if the world is in the situation it's in or not, that we have to build in back end time where we take care of us, where we're gentle with ourselves when we get exposed to something which is awful. And that it might be like, okay, I've read it, now I'm just going to go right away and write about it, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to just sort of take a walk or do whatever it is you do to take care of you, and then feel empowered to advocate and say, this is why this is not okay, and that this needs to be a wake-up call, and so on.
I don't know why I'm getting so emotional over this, but why... part of me goes, I don't know if I can live my whole life like that. Like, this is my world every week. I use that example because it's a popular example, but This is happening all the time. People want to show me these videos of puppy mills and dogs and their pets, and they're all being abused, and I'm just constantly bombarded by it, and I don't want to look at it, but I do want to
understand
people, and I don't know. Of course, we're filming this, and I'm getting upset.
It's also, you're judging your emotion right now. That this is a good thing. That part of letting go of anxiety is that this is overwhelming. Is to let those tears flow. It is overwhelming.
Yeah. I put it on myself, but I feel like this is my it's my responsibility to carry this burden, and I have, because I signed up for it years ago, and now I have to do it. And God, this is so annoying. I want to get to a place where I can watch and learn and be logical and not so emotional, and advocate from a place of logic, not suffer from a place of emotion.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Kyle. I'm going to be hardcore with you for a moment. How would you feel if I tell you may never get to that place?
I would feel like I do now, because I have it's the life I've lived. I've lived in that place for so long, living like that more. Okay, but here's the difference, Kyle. Is you're labeling this as some sort of a fail, that I can't sit with this imagery and advocate for it, that I am not tougher or something like that. And can there be a big part of managing anxiety is acceptance. There's acceptance of our limits, acceptance of the things we can't fix, acceptance of that we can do our best in a given situation. And you've advocated for animal rights your entire career, and you will continue to do so. But does that have to happen? Nobody needs to watch repeated videos of these abusive things to know that they're happening. They're happening regularly in all these realms. And right now, for you, I'm hearing from you this idea that people may even be entertained by seeing something that's happening, like to tell people this isn't okay, and that in that hope is always there for you. But you putting yourself in the purview of this imagery, that almost sounds like self-harm. It feels that way.
Yeah. And can you give yourself that space to be self-compassionate, to say like, okay, I don't need to see that this is wrong. So when somebody brings something to your attention, you don't need to witness it. You don't need to watch it, because that sounds like it is it really provokes physiological aspects of anxiety people who view that imagery from your place, who are upset by it, they feel a tightness in their chest, like they can't breathe. Their heart races. They sometimes, and people almost sometimes feel to the point of panic. There's no reason for you to watch that imagery. If you were saying that you need to watch something that is integral to your job, that is like you need to read something that would allow you, this is not necessary. You can do this advocacy without that, but it's giving yourself the permission to figure out a way, in a regular way, whether it's a blog, whether it's a video series you put out, whether it's working with an existing advocacy agency, that would play out how you thought was fit, but without feeling that you need to take it all on, which is very common in anxiety, is that it's an all or nothingness. Like, if I can't fix all of this, I'm not doing anything.
Right. I understand what you just said. How do I get there? Like, what are the steps? And honestly, you and I did not plan to talk about this. It just came up. I would commit to a plan if I thought there was some resolution at the end, even if that plan took a long time, I would still do it.
Well, it's going to time. And I think number one, let's break this down, Kyle. There's multiple elements to what is anxiety, right? One piece of anxiety is how we think. One part of anxiety is physiologically how we feel. One is emotionally, how we feel. And one is sort of the mood, the anxious mood, that sort of sense of everything's, out of control. And we just it's a feeling, it's a mood state. So let's work on the thinking, the feeling, and the physiological feeling, okay? The physiological part, Kyle, is kind of out of your control. The only thing that's in your control is how you think about it. All right. That's the only thing you can manage here. Even emotional feelings are a little bit out of your purview because they happen. So the only thing we have to work here with, Kyle, is thinking, how you think about it. So the thing I'd have you start with first is to list your thoughts about how you feel about this. And I'm hearing already thoughts like, I feel like I have to fix this. I feel like I have to watch this content. I feel like to address it on a regular basis, okay? Or I think I have to do these things, right? Already look how I'm saying it. I'm saying, I feel I have to, I think I have to, I feel I have to. Right now you're saying, I have to fix this. I have to add these animals. I have to make this better. I have to watch the content. There's a difference between the first thing I said, I think I have to, and I have to.
Yeah. I think in the ACT interview series, it was the practice of saying, I am having the thought that.
Yes, exactly. Blah, blah, blah. Yes. I'm having the thought I have to save all these animals.
Yes.
But you need to list the beliefs right away. Like, that's the first step. You're going to see sort of what's driving this. It's almost the person who says, I have to be perfect, and I have to homeschool my kids, and I have to cook them 4 healthy meals a day, and I'm like, oh my God, like this has failed before we even got you up this morning, right? So when you look at that in that way, you start seeing how, in essence, you've set yourself to, if you will, fail, and that's going to contribute to a sense of anxiety. As you start addressing the beliefs and using different language to express them, again, the breaking down of the thoughts, okay, allows you to start thinking about alternative responses. Because right now what's happened, Kyle, is there's a conditioning. Somebody calls you, watch this video. It's almost, the physiological reaction for you almost happens before the words come out. You're like, absolutely not, no, I can't believe this is happening. And you immediately spin into distress. If you have that ability to go to your thoughts and say, I see what's happening here. These kinds of videos are triggering for me. I can give myself permission to not watch this and communicate with someone and say, you know what? I'm going to, as always, I'm continuing in my advocacy efforts. And I would say, Kyle, the struggle is if there's people in your purview, people, you might be getting these videos sent to you from people who don't even know you, but from people who do, you could set a boundary. Again, that's an idea of taking back some sense of control over the situation, which is what helps us with anxiety, but then also giving yourself permission to have an alternative response. That I don't need to respond to every email like this, but I am already now doing this each day or each week to respond to this, and then work towards the acceptance piece. But in the initial phase, Kyle, and a lot of the monitoring for you initially is it's going to feel uncomfortable to not respond to everyone. And that discomfort may not only be feeling the feeling of anxiety, but also understand it's part of the process of letting go of this cycle, and that you can then set something for yourself that feels more comfortable. Like I said, something you do every week in an advocacy capacity. But in the interim, you have to tolerate the uncomfortable feelings. That's what's hard, because those feelings aren't going to destroy you. And I think that's what a lot of people believe. This feeling is going to break me. This feeling is going to kill me.
Right.
And to say, no, the feeling can't kill me. And you literally have to give yourself that reminder. In fact, in very classical cognitive behavioral therapy, people are instructed to wear an elastic band around their wrist and snap it when getting into their negative self-talk, like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person, I'm not helping the animals. Snap. So you stop that negative sequence, instead saying, okay, I don't have to respond to this. I certainly don't need to watch this imagery, and I can keep doing the things I'm doing that are helping me do one piece of advocacy in this space.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm going to send this video to a lot of animal people, because I know, and this is relevant to so many things. We all have.
Yeah, there's so many things. Many things. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope people watch this and replace my issue with
yeah, absolutely.
Whatever they're going
to give you a sense of, like, sort of holistically, for example, I work with many people who are survivors of trauma.
Yeah.
And they will find that there are films they cannot watch or articles in the newspaper they cannot read. And they will get angry at themselves, like, this is ridiculous. This is running my life. And I'll say, it's not running your life. Let's figure out a new way to talk about this, that I don't need, this is not something I need to watch. I understand this. There's other ways I can engage in this content. It's as though they feel like, I'm not doing right by other sexual assault survivors. It's not, and to give themselves permission to say, I don't want to watch this. It doesn't feel comfortable for me. I'm protecting me, because again, anyone who's been through trauma, it's about protecting yourself. But it's a lot of what managing anxiety is giving yourself permission. And because the flood of emotion is like a tsunami, it's just literally taking you over. It's finding different ways to talk about it, think about it, and get to a place of acceptance. But there's other things that trigger the anxiety. People pressuring you. If you're getting those emails every day, that it's also, how do you have to then interact with your emails? Or is there a separate inbox that these need to go to? Or it's structural stuff, but a lot of it ultimately is how do I think about this? Do I owe every person who emails me a response?
Thank you so much.
I hope that was helpful, but it is, yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
It was so helpful. It's more helpful than you or anyone probably can realize, because it's something that I've fought. I've never given myself permission. I've never even thought about permission for years. I mean, more than a decade at this point. Man, I know I had all these problems, Bridget. I got a lot of
this is why we need to sit in the same room again. But remember too, if you can think of it one last way to give everyone an analogy they can stick to. I don't know if you know what a riptide is, but a riptide is the ocean, an ocean current that comes close to shore, but that can pull you out. But ultimately, a riptide will actually bring you back into the shore, or you'll break out of it, and then people want to swim right back to the shore. And they try to fight the riptide, which makes it worse, and then they exhaust themselves. But if you're parallel to the shore, slowly but surely the riptide will let you go, and then you can swim back in. Anxiety is like a riptide. It pulls you out, and you exhaust yourself when you try to swim out of it. And so part of this is going with it, listening to it, and figuring out your way of swimming parallel to the shore, giving it as much importance. Okay, I see what I'm doing. I feel obligated to answer every email in my inbox. What's this about? Then you start realizing that it goes to deeper roots, like I'm a people pleaser and I have to please everyone. And listen, in the electronic age, you ain't never going to please everyone. But think of it as that riptide. None of us ever swim out of them. We've got to figure out our way of swimming parallel to the shore. The riptide will let you go. You just got to be patient with yourself.
You're the best. Thank
No,
you.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate that. And
Thank you. I really mean that. Thank you for
thank you.
everyone. That's going to resonate with so many people. Thank
I
you.
hope so. I hope so,
Um,
Kyle. It's a joy to see you as always, and I look forward to seeing you more, even if it's just virtually in the week.
Yeah, well, until further notice, it will be. I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you for watching this. You can
My
get
pleasure.
on YouTube and medcircle.com. I'm Kyle Kittleson.
Yeah.
Remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.